In an apocalyptic notice, WTO Director General Roberto Azevedo said, "Warning lights are flashing, and the world must act immediately." The European Union faces seeing 1.7% wiped from its GDP growth, he said. That equals £255 billion, $335 billion, of the EU's £15 trillion, $19.70 TRN GDP. The colossal figure roughly equates to the entire economic output of EU countries the size of Austria, Ireland, and Denmark, and far exceeds the GDP of Portugal, Hungary, and Romania. Mr. Azevedo said, "Clearly, we cannot let this happen." Speaking at a Berlin industry event against the backdrop of growing trade tensions between China and the United States, Mr. Azevedo added, "The warning lights are flashing. A continued escalation of tensions would pose an increased threat to stability, to jobs, and to the kind of growth that we are seeing today. A full-blown global trade war with a breakdown in international trade cooperation would reduce global trade growth by around 70% and GDP growth by 1.9%, Mr. Azevedo added. Donald Trump's tariffs threaten a full-blown trade war around the world. Image, Getty. There would be no winners from such a scenario and every region would be affected. The EU is the second largest economy in the world and represents 22% of the world economy. U.S. President Donald Trump has taken aim at foreign steel and aluminum producers, imposing tariffs on metals coming in from the European Union and China. The EU hit back, imposing its own raft of tariffs on hundreds of American goods in what has become a tit-for-tat spat. Roberto Azevedo, Director General of the World Trade Organization, speaking today. Image, Getty. There would be no winners from such a scenario and every region would be affected. Roberto Azevedo. Mr. Azevedo pointed to several reform proposals that address trade-distorting practices and the WTO's existing mechanisms to resolve trade disputes, adding that members had to agree on which reforms they wanted to focus on. The G20 summit in Buenos Aires in November would be crucial to agree on the next steps to safeguard the rules-based free trade order, he said. He added, "Clearly, this informed debate is gaining significant momentum and that is positive. Of course, the system can be better, in fact it must be better. But it's nonetheless vital. So while we work to improve it and ensure that it's more responsible to evolving economic needs, we must also preserve what we have, and I count on your support to that end." Angela Merkel and Roberto Azevedo, Director General of the World Trade Organization in Berlin. Image, Reuters. In a sign of economic fallout, Asian and U.S. stocks slipped today after another round of tariffs were imposed by the U.S. and China on each other's goods in their ongoing dispute on global trade. The Dow fell 0.7% in S. Masahiro Ichikawa, senior strategist at Sumitomo Mitsui Asset Management in Tokyo, said, "Wall Street weakness amid the latest flare-up in trade conflict concerns is a negative factor for equities. Some markets, like Japan's, have positive factors to fall back on like the weaker yen, but such support could be negated if the Chinese market is hit by volatility."